Hi, everybody. Welcome to Gallery Teachers Masterclass. My name is Myra Crustwhite, and today I will be delivering a very interesting talk to all of you. We are going to be talking about motivation. Okay, so let's begin by having a look at today's agenda. We are going to start by discussing some of the present challenges of staying motivation. We will then move on to some ideas to rethink motivation. And most importantly, we are going to be talking about some practical tips and strategies that we can start applying in our classrooms ASAP. So, if you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. Making your bed every morning is taking care of yourself, is having the purpose of coming back to a clean, nice bed at night after a long day. Taking care of ourselves is primary to staying motivated and be able to face all the coming challenges of life. Taking care of ourselves requires knowing ourselves in order to make the most of our intrinsic faculties and talents, which will ultimately fuel the motivation we need to get what we desire in life. Motivation is purpose, and purpose is hidden within our talents and our capacities because they bring us closer to knowing who we are and allow us to experience ourselves in deeper ways. So, in this workshop, the 9 strategies that we are going to see are oriented to finding that purpose that is hidden within our talents and our capacities. Now, basic fulfillment is essential to staying motivated. Motivation requires your very basic physiological and safety needs met. I would like to refer you to Maslow's pyramids of human needs. If we observe at the very base of this pyramid, we have our physiological needs: air, water, food, sustenance, everything that we need to be able to cope with life on a daily basis. We also have the safety needs, which is personal security, employment, means of living, resources, health. All those things are important before we can actually be motivated. Because as you can observe at the top of the pyramid, we have love of belonging, the importance of friendship, intimacy, respect, and self esteem, which ultimately take us to self actualization, the desire to become the most that we can be. So, as teachers, we may not be able to provide what is at the bottom of the pyramid of our students, but we can be very supportive with our students if they don't have their very safety and physiological needs met. We need to be supportive, and we can work with these 3 aspects at the top of the pyramid. We can create learning environments where friendship, intimacy, a sense of connection occur on a daily basis, where respect and self-esteem are a part of our class, and that will ultimately take us to the desire to self-actualize. Now, I'm going to jump directly into strategy 1. Strategy 1 is about unlearning in order to relearn everything we think we know about what keeps us motivated. And for this, I want to ask you a question. Let's see. If you had to give advice to a fellow teacher about how to keep students motivated, what would you suggest? Think for a minute. Now, let me guess. Many of you probably said, well, you can tell your students, you can encourage your students to push harder. You should tell them that they can do it. You should help them believe in themselves and encourage them to work harder. Now, this type of pep talk is always going to be very, very important. But today I want to concentrate on what lies behind these pep talks. How can we make motivation a tangible thing in our classrooms? Now, let me ask you a second question. A second question is, what do you understand by extrinsic and intrinsic motivation? And this question is because probably many of you would suggest that we look at extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. But what are they really? All this time, we have thought of extrinsic and intrinsic motivation as the inner motivation to perform something for its own sake, or because there is something in the out world that we are going to get. Now, I would like you to rethink this concept with me for a minute. The way that I see this is a little different. For me, intrinsic motivation is the intrinsic faculties that we all have, the GPS of our abilities, of our skills that will ultimately give us purpose. Sometimes we shy away from different or from difficult activities because we don't feel that we can perform. So the more we know our internal, our intrinsic faculties, we can make the most of them. Now, extrinsic motivation, I think I want to flip that concept into extrinsic faculties. What is out there that will facilitate an environment for me to learn and for me to thrive? Because, guys, as inside, so outside. Whatever happens in our inside will project to the outside. So, maybe this is one of the ideas that I would like you to think about in the different ways. So, summing it up, intrinsic faculties, intrinsic motivation is the GPS towards our goals. And the extrinsic faculties is what allows us to thrive. The immaterial, but the very powerful means that we possess to materialize all our dreams. The help that we get from our teachers, the help that we get from our institutions and our family. So, these are some of the ideas that we may initially have about motivation. However, sometimes it is a little difficult to think about motivation and to talk about motivation if you're not very motivated yourself. So, what can you do in that aspect? Well, I would like to invite you to do some reverse thinking. Reverse thinking doesn't mean negative thinking, reverse thinking means considering the opposite aspect of something that maybe you didn't consider before. Humans tend to learn by contrast, humans tend to learn by comparison. So sometimes engaging into this contrast can be really interesting to shed light on certain topics. So, for example, I have another question for you now. Think for a moment. What would you do if you wanted to deliberately demotivate your students? I know that this is a weird question, but think for a moment. Now, most of the times we do normal thinking, and that looks like, okay, so what can I do to motivate my students? And then we think, I'm going to bring more new apps. I'm going to bring more games. I'm going to bring more interesting tasks. I'm going to bring more videos. Okay. Now, if you ask, what would I do if I wanted to deliberately demotivate students? Well, I would probably bring a lot of content, and that might be a little difficult for my students to handle, and that may actually cause them to become demotivated. So maybe your initial idea about bringing lots of things was not as good as you thought. So here what I am trying to tell you is that for every positive idea that you have, try to go to its reverse side. It may bring light on what you have to do, because sometimes motivation is about, or isn't just about doing more. Sometimes it's about doing less and about doing better. So use this technique for those times where you cannot really come up with many good ideas about motivation, because motivation is a very ample aspect. It implies seeing things from many different perspectives in order to be able to incorporate aspects of motivation into your everyday life. It's about freedom, it's about achievement, it's about the messages that you tell yourself, it's about how you see it. And also you have to consider that the things that you consider motivating may not be so motivating for other people. So this is why reverse thinking can really help you stay on the task of motivation. Now, another thing that you can do when doing reverse thinking is to go to failure stories. When we look at successful stories or at success stories, we normally get the message. But when we look at failure stories, we get the lessons learned, we get the outcomes. So once in a while, allow you and your students to explore your failure stories together and see what lessons you have learned from that. So thinking a little bit opposite might actually have a very good result for you. So with no further ado, I'm going to go to strategy 2. The strategy 2 is to plan based on competencies. Like I was saying earlier, Sometimes we shy away from things, or we feel that we are demotivated because we don't feel that we are up to the task. We don't feel that we are competent, that we are capable. This is why I have been escaping mathematics all my life, for example. But how can you make your students feel capable, able of doing things? By including competencies in your lesson plan. This doesn't mean generating more complex activities. It basically means asking yourself questions in your lesson plan. For example, normally English teachers tend to go to background knowledge. What about background experience? What about background skills that maybe they have from other subjects like music, arts, math, sciences, what have you? What about maybe prior behavior? Maybe in some at some time in the past, your students took another English class where they had negative responses to reading or to listening. You can explore why that behavior occurred, and maybe you can do a little shift of behavior for these new activities. It is a matter of exploring how that behavior affected your performance and how a new behavior can affect your performance and take you to your goals. So, feeling competent is going to help your students feel motivated. Also, make sure that you ask these questions at the end of the class. Which were the attitudes, the knowledge, the skills that we used for this specific lesson? Remember that motivation is what gets you started, but discipline is what keeps you going. So discipline and motivation are closely interrelated. How so? Let's have a look at this. And for this, I'm going to go to strategy number 3. Turn your goals into systems. Start thinking about systems rather than goals. What do I mean by that? Motivation is a process. Motivation is not a fixed thing that happens all the time. Motivation is a process, and motivation has its ups and downs. So rather than thinking, how can I keep my students motivated? Think, how do I instill and maintain goal-oriented behaviors in my classroom? I'm going to tell you how. By creating systems. How does this look like? Let's see. The first thing that we need to do, of course, is goal setting. However, a goal without a plan is just a wish. And our wishes need to go down to the tangible reality. And for this, we create systems. Allow me to give you an example. You may have the goal of losing 10 pounds in the next 3 months. Okay, there's your goal. There's your wish. There's your intention. However, what environment can you create around you to get the support you need to have goal-oriented behaviors on a daily basis? Well, you create systems. Let's have a look at this one. You can do a part of your system is to do 30 minutes cardio 3 days a week, okay? Or a 25-minute run 5 times a week, plus eating 3 healthy meals every day. Let's see, that is part of the system, but the system also would look a little bit like this. I am going to keep my running shoes and my running outfit next to my bed every morning instead of way back in my closet where I won't be able to find it. I will keep the healthiest food at the front of my fridge so that this is the first thing that I see when I open my fridge. Now you are creating systems that allow you to attain your goal. Now, in the case of learning, how would this look like? Let's say, for instance, that we want to help our students improve their vocabulary. Well, help them create a system by having a couple of dictionaries next to them, a notebook where they can record their vocabulary, maybe 3 different types of online dictionaries that can give them that support, and make sure that every class, before you go into reaching your goal, you create your system. This is going to help you instill and generate goal-oriented behaviors in your class every day. Now, strategy number 4, from teacher to master. What do I mean by this? Because we want to motivate our students by making them feel able, by creating these systems, by generating new outcomes, this also requires us to think a little further about our teacher roles. So far, our teacher roles have been facilitators, coaches, and mentors. And that is very important. We must continue to be the facilitators and the teachers and the mentors, but also we might want to challenge ourselves to go into the master level. What is the master level? How does the master behave in front of their students? A master is also a problematizer, somebody that will make you resilient in the face of adversity. The master implies the contribution of your generation. We come from different generations, than our students, but we have a lot to give. Sometimes we feel overwhelmed with the fact that there's all this new technology and all these new things, and we seem to come from a different world. Well, embrace that different world you come from. Take the best teachings from that different world and make sure to transfer your students temperance, strength, truth seeking, and transformation. Help them to transform. So, from teacher to master is also going to help you motivate and inspire your students. Strategy 5, and probably, guys, my favorite. Strategy 5 is about discipline faculties. What do I mean by this? Let's see. Faculties are our capacities, our wits, our gifts, our talents, our senses. Now, this is maybe not on the skill sets that you have previously considered. So here I am going to give you 5 faculties that I think you should help your students develop because they may work wonders in terms of learning. So the first faculty that I encourage you to develop with your students is perception. What do I mean? When you change the way you look at things, usually the things you look at change too. So maybe you were working on an exercise that your student considered was very difficult. You can challenge that perception. Why do you think it's difficult? What makes it difficult? Or maybe a student may perceive that an activity is not necessary. Why do you perceive it to be unnecessary? Having these discussions with our students may help them understand where their perception is and may help them actually change and reformulate that perspective and that point of view. The second is reason, the faculty of reason. Okay, so just because in a class we are having a lot of mental activity doesn't mean that we are thinking. So it is very important to be very clear with our students about what thinking really looks like. Has it ever happened to you that you do something in life in a class and then you look back and you think, oh, that didn't go really well. What was I thinking? Well, there's a very good chance you weren't. So this is why it's very important to always go back and observe our reasoning devices. The third one is memory. Most of our students expect entertaining activities. Most of the teachers want to plan entertainment activities. And then memory kind of falls behind. But memory is a very important cognitive ability to develop still. So our students need to become aware that memory is actually a talent that needs to be exercised every day. Along with imagination. Imagination is very, very important. Say that you are doing a kind of, I don't know, any kind of activity, a speaking activity. You can encourage your students to imagine where this type of knowledge can take them in the future, where maybe they can imagine having, I don't know, a conversation with a celebrity or a conversation in a different country that they wish to travel to. And also the concept of intuition. Maybe you are going through an activity with your students and you ask them how they are doing and they may say, I don't know, I don't have a very good feeling about my performance in this activity, or I don't have a very good feeling about this. Okay, it's worth exploring those type of feelings because intuition is actually a very powerful sub-skill for intelligence. Okay, guys, so also, developing faculties in the classroom is going to help the students understand themselves a lot better. They're going to be able to get a good idea of how their mind and their emotions work. Also, self-image is very important because it has been proven by research that a motivated person is usually a person with a very positive future self-image. Those people who tend to have a negative imagination to the future tend to be more demotivated. And others who have a more positive future self-image have proven to show more motivation. So make sure that you encourage your students to generate positive future images of themselves. Now, strategy 6, the law of minimum effort. What is this? Okay, so sometimes it's hard to be motivated. We got to keep it real. Uh, Maybe we don't really like the task that we were assigned, but we have to power through. So teaching your students how to power through is actually a very important aspect of keeping goal-oriented behaviors. So how do we actually apply the law of minimum effort? The law of minimum effort is not doing less, but it's doing more with less. It's getting the maximum effect from a minimum effort. So when your students or yourself, when you are faced with this type of tasks that are kind of hard to be motivated about, the first thing that you definitely need is acceptance, resilience. We need to accept and we need to be resilient at the fact that there are things that maybe we don't love doing, but that are instrumental to the greater goals that we have, to the greater good that we want to generate. So we need to surrender a little bit, surrender, and become responsible of what you have to do. And for this, you're going to need an action plan. So your action plan may consist of small tasks to do every day that will help you attain a certain goal, rather than sitting down and studying for 3 hours until you cannot do it anymore. But you're trying to power through, telling yourself, work harder, you can do this. Maybe you can try the opposite aspect of it and say, I'm going to be a little less harder on myself, but definitely more effective. So I'm going to do this specific task for 3 minutes every day, but I will be responsible to do this every single day. Okay? So it's about efficiency. It's not about pushing yourself harder. So explore with your students the many ways in which you guys can become efficient. Strategy 7, max out collaboration. How can we do that? Well, most of our classes have objectives, have goals, and we share these goals and these objectives with our students. But what about having a mission? What is your mission as a teacher with that specific class? What is the mission of that class? Maybe you can assign a mission. Where do all these projects that you do go? What impact do they have? What positive impact may they have in others when you share something in social media, for example? Have you thought of assigning your group a mission? Each group may have a different mission, and this mission will take them to have shared goals and shared opportunities. Something very important is that when you do collaborative activities with your students, you have to be very clear about your collaboration expectations, not only about the linguistic outcome of the activity, but what you expect from your students in terms of collaboration. And in this way, you can help them figure out their individual strength and their shared areas of opportunity in order to promote a community working environment where open communication, honesty, and empathy are very important. Make sure that you celebrate and reward successful teamwork, but also make sure that you clarify goals, roles, and responsibilities. Now, for our 8th strategy, class activities need air. What do I mean by this? Apart from, of course, breathing in order to take life easily, your class need air. What do I mean? Air stands for amazing, inspiring, and relevant. This is the ideal scenario. We would love to have classes which always have amazing and inspiring content and ideas and that are very relevant to our students. However, this may not happen every single class. Like I said, for me, keeping it real is very important. We have to address the fact that sometimes, like I said, motivation may has its ups and downs. So this would be an up, an air up, amazing, inspiring, and relevant. But in the downs, maybe your class can be analytic, interesting, and rewarding. It can give you food for thought. So maybe that from there, your heart will also get a lot of the benefit. So make sure that you give all your lessons some air, okay? And now we're going to go to a final strategy, purpose. Like I was saying in the beginning, motivation is comes from purpose. Ask yourself, what do we want from education? What do you want from education? What do you want from your students? What do you want from your class? What is the purpose of this? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to give out to the world? We gotta always remind our students that beyond that door, real life is waiting, and real life is going to have many challenges, and real life is going to need our purpose, our talents, and our faculties. And the best tool that I have found to help my students find purpose is actually multiple intelligences, but with a little twist. So learning and multiple intelligences are, in the end, cognitive styles. They are learning styles. They usually refers to interest, but not just interests alone. For example, I am interested in painting. I like it. It's a nice hobby, but I don't have any orientational dimension to it, you know? So where do your interests connect with your orientational dimensions? For example, let's think of introverts. Introvert students tend to be realistic. These people are very good with working with tools and working with things. Introverts also can be investigative and maybe have a scientific mind, maybe go for scientific pursuits. Extroverts can be artistic, interested in aesthetic and self-expression, or on social aspects of the human life, helping people. Maybe the highly mathematical, verbal, analytic can be into enterprising, buying, selling, marketing, or maybe some of us are, why not? Some of our interests, some of our faculties take us to more administrative structured tasks. We may prefer some of that. So learning styles have helped me help my students find their orientational dimensions and put all their skills or all their talents and all their faculties at play. And this has helped me keep my students motivated. Um, so something very important to reflect upon every day in terms of motivation is, how much good can you do to the world? How much of that talent, of those intrinsic faculties you can give out to the world? So I really hope you enjoyed these 9 strategies. I hope that you apply them ASAP. And I would like to invite you to use our very useful websites for ELT resources at Gallery Teachers, where we have workshops and continuous professional development. Asking if teachers are responsible for students' motivation is actually a question that, for me, has a twofold answer. So the first answer is no. And the second answer is yes. So let's see. No, in the sense of, I don't think teachers are accountable for it as such. I think that we are all accountable for our own drive and our own motivation. Now, yes, in the sense of teachers being response able. That means, do we have the ability to respond to our students' motivation needs? Then yes, it is our ability to be responsive to our students' motivation needs and be able to create the necessary environments and experiences for them to stay motivated. There are numerous ready strategies available that teachers can use to motivate students. However, it is very important to always consider the context and our students' needs. It is very important that we know what our students respond to. It is very important to go through these strategies and assess the impact and assess the results that they have on a particular class or on a particular student. Yes, the strategies that we can use to motivate students may differ from an online than an offline teaching environment. It would depend on what these environments offer. It depends on the type of group that you are handling or the type of student that you are handling. So it is very important to always be observant of the environment, the digital environment or the offline environment, and make sure that you adapt and use that environment in your favor.